Good evening, right in time for the family edition. My name is Lee Kuyani Eli, and I'm excited and at the same time worried, man, because I don't know what is going to make of this conversation because it is very emotive. What are we talking about? Find out because tonight it's all about without a doubt. When you get to ask yourselves, am I sure about everything that is happening? The DNA. And with me tonight, we have a switch of things because we want to have the gentleman's look into this because most of the time it's them that are worried about their offsprings. So James Mwati is with me tonight, and James Mwati is a psychologist based in Nairobi, Kenya. And tonight he's coming to give his perspective on the topic. Good evening, James, and how are you?
Evening, Ellie. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to discuss this. Other than having Nyokabi here, because Nyokabi would have had the female effect on the topic, even though it's a family edition, and we welcome each and everyone to this discussion, of course. Let's have the conversation in the comment section. Send in your questions and answers in response to what we are discussing tonight. So, James, there have been a couple of discussions, some of them new, some of them old, concerning the issue to deal with the DNA. So before we even ask ourselves, why is this of importance? I want to take you to Tanzania, where the members of parliament were discussing or have actually discussed this issue as a matter of national importance. So let's find out what they said, and then we can just come back to the discussion.
Tatizo kubwa sana za nchi za magharibi, kwa sababu nchi za magharibi mtoto na mke ni commodity, lakini kwa jamii nyingi sisi huku tulikuwa hatuhangaiki sana na swala la biological father, kwa sababu fatherhood is social and not biological. Lakini kwa sababu dunia tunaingiliana, ndio maana tumeanza sana kuhangaika na biological father. Kawaida fatherhood is social. Most of us in this house and in Tanzania, we are social fathers. We are fathers to our children because of socialization. Biologically, we are not 100% sure, and we should not trouble ourselves to know whether we are biological fathers of the kids we are taking care of or not.
James Mwati, your take on that conversation.
Ellie, this, like you say, this is a very emotive topic.
Yeah.
And when I watch that clip, the first thing that comes to mind, or that the first question that I ask myself is, why would a whole parliament, why would a whole country debate such an issue? It seems there might be something that's brewing there that spurred this conversation, because for a motion to find its way into parliament, I am assuming it's the same with our parliament as it is with Tanzania, then it is a national issue. So again, that baffles me. But then these are things that we have faced, especially in the recent times. These are topical issues that are talked about, what we call chini ya maji. Probably now they have finally found their way into national conversations. My ask, for lack of a better phrase, would be, is it that men are feeling cheated? Is it that men are feeling like they're taken advantage of? Is it that men are feeling like they don't have a voice? So many questions run through my mind when I listen to that clip.
Well, we will call them a lot of questions, James, but one thing that stands out is that particular legislature says, and I'm sorry I'm not able to capture his name, but he says that fathers are a social relationship with their children, with the connection that most of the time you might not actually be taking care of your children as you assume. Do you think this has been normalized by any chance, and it is becoming not so relevant according to that member of parliament?
I find, Ellie, I find what the context of what he says to have a bearing on our traditional cultural settings. Yeah. And he's trying to bring the sense of community that we had as Africans in our social setting into the recent context, into urban life. And what do I mean by this? Growing up, and traditionally, a child did not belong to one particular person. I'm sure even you, when you're growing up, you made some mistake and you'd start being hooped from the shop all the way. Everybody who you met, whether they knew you or not, they would discipline you and it would not be an issue at home. Therefore, the child belonged to the community. And that's where he finds his footing when he says, as men, we bring up children not because they are your biological children, but because you have a sense of duty. And that's where, again, he goes ahead and says, go on and take care of kids and do not bother to find out whether they're yours or not. Again, which brings me again to another difficult question that I would want to pose to the viewers. What does it mean to be a father? Because now that seems to be the direction we are headed to. Who is a father? How would you define a father? Because if we find this definition, then probably we'll be halfway through unraveling this quagmire of whether to go the DNA way or not.
So, and therefore, we want just to ask and invite our viewers, as you discuss that, who is a father? What is the definition? What defines, or what exactly, what wording would you use to define a father? And for that case, would you actually demand for a DNA test if you suspected your partner of infidelity? So send in your yes or no answer and tell us why. So, James, a couple comes to you, they're furious, and they tell you they have and they must do a DNA. Is this something you will actually recommend?
A DNA in itself is not an end. If anything, it might be the start to very many problems. I would want to find out what has happened that has led them to this position where they're demanding a DNA. Yeah, because by the time a couple is demanding that, or one partner is demanding, and these things are done, by the way, in secret. One partner usually goes and wants to do a DNA without the knowledge of the other. Yeah, but by the time things are getting there, it's because there have been deep-rooted and deep-seated issues that the couple are unable to deal with. So it's not just about the DNA. I would advise, if it is a must that people do a DNA, let it be as a last resort. Why do I say that? By the time we're subjecting kids to a DNA, already there has been a shift in terms of relationships, not only between the two partners, but also it has permeated through to the children. Again, remember, irrespective of the DNA results, the children are innocent. So assuming, for example, that this man who is demanding a DNA has raised these children for 12 years, rough estimate, will we throw away the 12 years because of a DNA test? Will we throw away the relationship the man has had with these children because he is suspecting, quote unquote, infidelity, for example, from the wife or the partner? Because the DNA deeply touches on the foregoing relationship that the parent will have with the children. Again, I find it a misnomer when we say that I will accept the results as they are. I just want to know. That is a fallacy. There's nothing like that. If you are ready to accept the results as they are, then there's no need of doing the DNA in the first place. Yeah. So by the time a couple is getting to a point where they feel we need to do a DNA, there are deep-rooted trust issues that might need to be dealt with even before the DNA testing is done.
We're in the family, and finally, all these things don't make sense, James. And you decide, okay, fine, we are going for DNA. What are the chances if it turns out actually positive that these are your children? Then what?
Again, and that's why earlier I said there is no DNA is not an end to itself, because look at it this way. They go ahead and have the DNA performed, and the children turn out to be the biological children of this man. What that does to both the couple and the children is it has already created mistrust. It does not matter what the results are, the mistrust has been cultivated. You have subjected these children to speculation, you subjected them to examination, you subjected them to unwarranted attention because of two people's misunderstandings. Yeah, a DNA, in my opinion, a DNA is more complicated for a young mind. Yeah, for a child, a DNA is more complicated than a divorce or a separation of the parents. A separation we can explain to the kids, we are not getting along, daddy and mommy have decided to stay each person in their own house. We can find an explanation. But when now we perform a DNA, we have brought the children into the mix. Remember again, when you look at the psychology of children, any event that occurs to children or to the parents and the young brain cannot make sense of, they take ownership and blame. So they feel they are the problem. Yeah. So imagine what you're doing to these children when you subject them to a DNA. Already you're telling them, or they are internalizing, that I am a problem. I am an unwanted party in this relationship. And it doesn't matter whether it turns out that they are biologically the man's or not. You've already fixed that notion in the child's mind that I am a mistake, for lack of a better word. And we don't want to do that because, again, these are issues that later catch up with us. These are the same people who later on in life, in their adolescence maybe, or young adulthood, they turn out and they have developed abnormal coping mechanisms to dealing with life's issues. So we see substance use or abuse, we see anxiety disorders, we see depression. So this might be, and again, I would want to urge parents, some of the things that we do, we need to be very careful and considerate and project at least what do my actions mean to this young soul 10, 15 years from today, because the effects of this are not felt then, they are felt way later. So Ellie, to answer your question in brief, because you had asked what would happen if the DNA turned positive and the children are the man's, that relationship is broken repairably. We might try to fix it. Some succeed in fixing it, but things will never be the same. Again, remember also, looking at it from the woman's perspective, you've given her grounds. There's a noose that you've put over your neck. You'll always be subjected to, you doubted me. You can't trust me. Yeah. So it is a whole quagmire.
There is the traditional DNA that they tell us, if you have doubts, then you need to, for example, from the villages we come from, you say, just ask the child to, fix their toiletry issues while they are facing the house or facing on the fence, towards the fence rather. Is this something that you'll use instead of the other medical one, James? I mean, we're just trying to find out a way to do it without, causing problems. Or some will actually take you to your village and start speaking some strange things. I
Ellie,
really just want to understand it, James.
it is not the action of the DNA taking. It is the implications, whether real or implied, that follow the action. Yeah. What do I mean? It's very easy to tell a child we are going to hospital because we want you immunized. So we'll go and collect a sample there and we will tell the child you're being immunized, or we are checking if you're okay. Whatever, whichever way we clothe it, we can easily get away with that. But remember, human beings are made of emotions. And immediately there is this tussle between man and woman, between two partners concerning paternity. Yeah. The child is able to sense that things are not okay. One big mistake that we make is assume that children do not visualize and decipher whatever is happening around them. So we assume hakuna kitu wanaelewa, they are just there, they don't understand. So we can do our thing and the kids will not understand. But you'll notice that children are more observant than adults. That is their world. Children learn, children socialize or are socialized through observation. So while we might take them to the village, we might tell them to pee facing Mount whatever, while we might use all these means, ultimately the child will pick that there is something, there is an anomaly in my family setup and I am involved. The biggest problem there, Ellie, again, I think we've done a few shows with you. My major concern always is the child is innocent. I am not saying that the partners should not fight, that the partners should not figure out paternity issues and all that. But once we bring the child into the matrix, then it's no longer about us. It is about the children because they didn't choose. They didn't choose your fights. They didn't choose you, the two of you meeting. They didn't choose all this. But you've met and you've created a child, and the child is innocent. And I don't know, then we might need to find better ways of fighting or resolving. Let me withdraw the word fight, of resolving our conflicts. Again, Ellie, I'll take you back to where I started. By the time a couple is questioning paternity, they did not wake up one day and realize, I don't think this child is mine. No. There has been a series of events that have created this mistrust, and the DNA is the mwisho. They're at their wits' end. They can no longer function, or one party can no longer function, and they demand a DNA. The question that I would again pose is, why do we want this DNA? And what are the consequences of the DNA? Even before we perform it, what are the consequences of the result turning whichever way? That is important to note, because again, I find it ridiculous when people say, I love this child very much, I've brought him or her up, and nothing will change. Nothing will change, then we should not do the DNA.
Fair enough. We shouldn't do that if nothing's going to change. Let's take a short break, James. And when we come back, we dig a little bit deeper into this emotive discussion because I still have quite handful questions for you to address as we continue with the discussion. Remember, you're watching the Family Edition tonight. I'm having James stepping in for Nyakabi GK Kamau, and he's oozing a lot of wisdom. We take a break.
So she rushed back immediately and told me, Mommy, come and see. Chichi's playing a game and he's swinging on his neck. I couldn't believe. You can't believe that. It's surreal. You can't. I don't know what to do.
Hello, my loves. This is Victoria and Kata from Responding to Life. First and foremost, I'd love to thank each and everyone who has been supportive of Responding to Life ever since we began our work. Responding to Life aims to empower, inspire, and motivate lives. And this we do all across our social media platforms, especially on our YouTube channel. Now, our vision is to be of impact to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives, where we aim to move from a negative mental state to a positive mental state. Thus, our focus is on mental health and daily life issues. Our mission is to identify issues that concern the youth especially, but all other individuals, and be able to be of help through counseling, through videos, and much, much more. So stay connected and let us know how we can be of assistance. And also you can be of assistance by keeping the motivation train moving. See you on the internet waves.
Yes, and we are back. My name is Likuyani Eli with James Mwathi on the Family Edition, talking about the 99.9% when it comes to matters identity. So, James, let's take it a little bit further. And for everyone that is joining us in the comment section, welcome again. Edel Kweyu, Rayson Malel, and Norina Mbata, Tomaka Thomas, Jekita. Thank you so much for the conversation in the comment section. We'll be coming to that later on. James, you are there, and we are saying if you're going to accept the results, then why actually pursue that line of argument? And anyone will say, for the sake of identity. Does that come into play, James, when we want to say, okay, I would love to identify my child and for them to actually know their roots? Does it come into play, James?
Yes and no. The quick answer would have been no. But again, we exist, we don't exist in a vacuum. Yeah. We have to appreciate the role of our cultures, where we feel that it is through blood that lineages are propagated, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So there is that aspect of I need to know so that I can know whether my family lineage is extended, or I've killed it. You know, you can kill your family. You'll be the end of that lineage. That is the cultural aspect, yeah. So we can't deny that fact, that there is that consideration. But then again, just like I'm saying, we don't exist in a vacuum, Ellie. We need to understand the context of our current existence. There are so many cultural values that we are doing away with that served their purposes then, but are no longer serving their purposes. Again, I'll go back, Ellie, to the same question that I started with. Who is a father? Because that is directly connected to the question that you asked about identity. Yeah. But then let's assume, again, I like creating a narrative. Let's assume with the 12-year-old that we had earlier insinuated, you have this 12-year-old boy who you thought was yours. So on birth, you named him after your father. So he assumed your father's identity. Yeah. 12 years later, because of misunderstandings and trust issues with your wife, you figure out I need to do a DNA test. If that DNA test proves that the son is not your biological son, what do you do as concerns identity? Because for 12 years, this young man has carried your identity. So do you deny him that identity? Do you say, no, now we are changing your name, you will not be named after my father, I don't know you? What do you hope to achieve? Or will it send you out again and try to sire another child so that you can get your identity? Yeah. So while we can understand, and remember, again, I don't want to take you back to history, but if we look at the identity aspect in history, it had its purpose. For example, sons were more appreciated because they were fighters, they were warriors, they would go out and conquer, they would increase the family wealth. That was the whole thing about this identity business. Yeah. It was because of that unit, the smallest unit in society, which is the family, and its need to protect itself against hostile neighbors, against poverty, against all those. Yeah. And that's why, for example, Ellie, women who got married and realized that they were barren, and this is a very good example. Women who got married and realized that they were barren would marry other women for their husbands. So a first wife would be with the husband for a few years, and then she realizes, I can't get children. She would not wait for the husband to go and look for another wife. Especially, I'm talking specifically on the Kikuyu culture because that's where I come from. Yeah. So the woman would go out and marry another woman, and then she would bring her into the house, yeah, for the husband to propagate that identity angle that you bring up. But that was very specific. It was because the family needed that foot soldiers, for lack of a better word, yeah. But in today's contemporary society, Ellie, identity will serve what purpose? I am trying to figure out the sole purpose that would be so important that somebody with specifically your blood has to be the one carrying your identity. What purpose does it serve? What about the families that adopt children? Because that's an acceptable form of forming a family that we've come to accept. A couple, for whatever reason, either both or one of them cannot bear children, they go out and adopt, or they get surrogate mothers. What about that? Who carries the identity? So again, even though you might ask about identity, I still go back to my earlier premise that it is the mistrust and the deep-rooted issues between the two couples, between the two partners, sorry, that are pushing us to look for justifications on why a DNA test is an absolute necessity.
Well, we continue the discussion. Remember, tonight we are discussing without a doubt that is DNA 99.9%. Would you demand for a DNA test if you suspected your partner of infidelity? And in this case, mostly it focuses on men. Send in your yes or no and tell us why in the comment section. So let's pick a few here, James, and probably we can respond to some. I'm very interested in this one. Isis Mahoney says, I would definitely do a DNA. My cousin raised 3 girls to age 8 that weren't his. He joined the US military and the DNA was required for them to qualify as dependents. The girls weren't his, but he still raised them like his. It's not okay to let men raise kids that aren't theirs. You want to say something?
Do you want me to respond?
But I wouldn't mind the response, actually.
The guy says the problem is not in the raising, but in the false assumption that the kids are yours. I think that's what that comment says. And I agree with him completely, 100%. I agree with him. And, oh, sorry, I agree with her. And if you realize from that, it is not... The couple did not have misunderstandings that caused the DNA to be performed. It was work related. Yeah, probably it's more devastating when you find out you thought everything is blissful, and then you found out that the kids are not yours. Yeah, but if you ask that caller or that viewer, the man might have gone ahead and continued bringing up the children, but the relationships changed. It might be relationships between the man who went to the US military and the wife, or the man and the children, but the dynamics, the family dynamics definitely changed. Again, remember, Ellie, and this is a discussion that I've had with you before. For men, it's the men have a very fragile ego. Men have a very, very fragile ego. A man, and I know I might get a bit of bashing for saying this, but men are weaker at dealing with situations that question their masculinity than women would be on questions regarding their feminism. The masculinity of a man is something sacred to him. Yeah. So when we bring that forward and assume that now paternity is put into question, we are questioning the whole essence of this man. We're questioning his whole being. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying relationships will change, because we have stripped naked the man. Once we do a DNA and it turns the kids are not his, we've stripped naked that man. And in order for him to protect his ego, logic no longer applies. He might want to be logical, but logic no longer applies. There are people who go through a DNA. Again, remember, I am not putting a blanket and saying that we should never do a DNA or it's unnecessary all through. There are people who do a DNA, and from that DNA, they engage in intense therapy and they emerge on the other side stronger than they were before. But it is not a walk in the park. It's something that calls for a lot of commitment from both parties and a lot of forgiveness and a lot of self-reflection. It's hard work. So we are not putting on, because I know, for example, at times, due to various situations, the judicial system might request for a DNA. And when the judicial system requests for a DNA, it's no longer optional. It has to be done. Yeah. My concern stems primarily from the angle where a couple have had disagreement. One party feels cheated upon and they want a DNA. My question is, without negating the essence or the importance of the DNA, my question still remains, and then what?
And then what? But someone here responds to that question, James, and I believe it's partly what we've discussed earlier on. And they say, even though DNA doesn't define you as a father, everyone wants to know their roots. And I think in this case, they're referring to the child in question. That's why when doubts, speculations, or gossips exist, it is required for the sake of the child to know the truth. Unfortunately, all this always starts because of betrayal and break of trust.
Let me comment on that, Eli. Now, what's the name of the viewer?
That is Njekita.
Njekita brings several issues into one, because from that comment, she presupposes the DNA is being done for the sake of the child. That is never the case. That is never the case when we are doing DNA. We do DNA for our own sakes, the parents. If the child wants to know the DNA, when the identity, when they are of mature age, that is 18 and above, that is perfectly okay. That is perfectly okay. Why? Because they have done all the pros and cons. They have figured out what will happen if I realize these guys who have raised me are not my biological parents. That's a completely different scenario. And we cannot purport to protect that guy who is above 18 when he or she is the one who now wants a DNA. That's a different topic. My concern is the couple is the one that wants to do the DNA. Yeah. The child is still a child by legal age. Yeah. And they are doing it for their own. You know where we started this discussion? Infidelity. So one party feels cheated. That is the DNA that I'm saying. We need to be careful. I'm not saying we do not do it, but we need to ask very many questions before we ultimately do the DNA.
Good one there. Let's just take a couple here more. And I have Kipro Roda who says, a man who asks for DNA test, it's too petty. My opinion, though. That means the man has been digging around.
Not necessarily. Ellie, there is that saying, I don't know if I'll capture it correctly, but it says it's only the mother who knows the father of the child. Yeah. So again, we can't say that all men should never question. That will be going around blind. Again, let's truth be told, we know that in today's world, women are cheating as much as men are, or even more. In fact, maybe even more, because it is said it's easier for a man to get caught cheating than it is for a woman, because women are planners. Women will plan, men we are careless. We don't care. We leave receipts and shoes in the car and stupid things that make us get caught. But a woman will plan. Yeah. So it is we can presume to some extent of certainty that there are several men out here raising children that are not theirs. That is, we are not negating that fact. Yeah. What we are asking is, if we get to that point where the man now wakes up and tries to ask, are these children mine? What has caused him to ask that question? That's where I would start. What has caused him to ask? Has the woman suddenly become careless, for lack of a better word? Yeah. And if she asks, I am an advocate for the children. So whatever the actions the two adults will take, how does it affect the children? And daily, again, we cannot finish this show, and I'm still waiting for the viewers to answer me. We will not finish this show without answering the question, who is a father?
Well, you have it, ladies and gentlemen, watching from the other sides of the screen. Who is a father? Because James would like to know, what is your definition of a father? Or should I say a father figure? Let's find out as we continue. But who is a father is the question. Let's not talk about figures for the moment. Trey says, I can't imagine raising caretakers' children after toiling for so long. It is heartbreaking. It is better to know the truth in the beginning. Again, James, your take.
No, I agree with him wholeheartedly. It is better to know the truth in the beginning, but then that would demand one of two things. Either we are absolutely honest with each other as a couple, and if that was to happen, then it would mean there would be no people who raise other people's children unless there is consent. Yeah, you know, I might not be able to get kids, so I give green light to my wife to go out there and get pregnant by another man. Yeah, so if that was the scenario, then I would know from the start that this is not my child. So there is that presupposition, one, or then we'll do DNA test at birth. If we have to know from beginning, only two scenarios apply. Either we are absolutely honest with each other, which is the ideal, or then we resort to DNA at birth.
Before we even answer or come to that DNA at birth, there is this one here that goes, Sarah Jonjo says, heart in heart, if the whole DNA thing will change how you see those kids and your partner, then acha ikae.
I agree. I said that along the way in this show, a separation or a divorce is easier to explain to the children than a DNA, because a separation or a divorce is between the two of them. A DNA brings in the third party, and the child internalizes, I am the problem. I am the reason why mommy and daddy are separating or having fights. So a problem that was not the child's, irrespective of whether the child is biological or not, yeah, a problem that was not the child now becomes the child. That is my whole problem with the DNA testing.
Well, fair enough. James, I will ask us to take a very short break. And after we do that, let's come back and find out from the guests that are watching who is a father. As we discover who is a father, equally answer the hard questions. Yes, now we've discovered this person that we've taken care of all this time is your child. And then the DNA proved that it's actually your child. But now the flip side is they are not your child. Let's find out in a moment, okay?
So she rushed back immediately and told me, Mommy, Mommy, come and see. Chichi's playing a game and he's swinging on his neck. I couldn't believe. You can't believe that. It's surreal. It's you can't. I don't know what to tell you. You just can't believe that that it has happened.
So indeed, tomorrow night on again it's all odds. My guest is Jacqueline Mutere. Join me as we complete this walk through the Mental Health Awareness Month. And it's a heartbreaking story, but let me not dilute it. We see one another tomorrow. And again, it's all odds. So I'm here with James. And James, before we left, there are quite some emotive issues that were coming from the discussion we were having. And you've asked the audience to tell us who is a father, but I see some of them are avoiding that question for their own reasons. We'll find out why they are avoiding it. But James, here you are. You have taken the test. The answer comes and it's negative. Again, my question, then what?
Very complicated, Ellie. Very, very complicated. Because now it means a Pandora's box has been opened. Yeah. And this Pandora's box is threatening to swallow everyone and everybody around it. It's threatening to swallow the husband, the wife, plus the kids. And assuming that there are several children in this marriage and only one was in doubt, then the doubt spreads to the rest. So it's swallowing everybody on its way. Yeah. And now the couple needs to sit down and make tough decisions. It needs to sit down and make very, very tough decisions. Number one, and that's why I was saying, even before we do the DNA, we need to try and identify what is the expected result. Why are we doing the DNA? What would happen? You role play all scenarios. What would happen if it's positive? What would happen if it's negative? So that the mind is prepared. Both parties are psychologically prepared. But then now it turns negative, and this man has raised this 12-year-old up believing that the child is his, but then it is not his. Number one, remember I've talked about the ego of the man. Immediately he's crushed and he's most likely to go into rage and justification. He will justify all his actions that he has ever committed or that he will commit in the next millennium to this particular result. So the woman already is disadvantaged. And the same to the child who is not biologically theirs. So now, unless handled very carefully, the woman and the child will always be under the mercy of the man. It is those ones of I cough, you jump. That is the kind of scenario we are likely to see. Yeah. Again, remember, the child is innocent. So we are punishing an innocent soul. I am not saying it all spells doom and gloom. With purpose, conscious purpose, the couple can decide to work out their differences. Depending on the magnitude of what led to the suspicions of the DNA. Yeah, the DNA is not an end on itself. There are reasons why we got to this point where we thought, let's do a DNA. Yeah. So if there is commitment to resolving those issues that were present and led to the thought of doing a DNA, and both parties are willing, not one, but both parties are willing to work out those issues and work out because they desire to be a couple, not because I depend on him or I depend on her. It is because the two desire to be together. Then it can be worked out, but it is work. And the couple have to each accept their responsibility. Yeah. Because on the flip side, Ellie, for a woman to go out and get a child with another man, there is a role that the man in her life is not playing. That's why I was saying it's a whole quagmire. Before we do the DNA, we need to figure out what is the basis of this. A woman who goes out, gets a child, and comes back to the house and pretends it's the husband and all that, while they may be cunning and they may be conniving, there is some need that they felt the husband was not fulfilling that led them outside. If the man was providing all round in all spheres of this woman's life, then she should not have strayed. Remember again, this woman was not forced into this relationship. They came in willingly. They subjected themselves that this is the man that I want to spend my time with. So for her to move out, there's some need that she's trying to find out there. I like that analogy of somebody who has said he would not want to take care of the caretaker's children. But ask yourself, and again, this is common, ask yourself, the man is a well-to-do, connected individual who is out there toiling hard to provide for his family. And the wife looks around, the nearest person or the person who she can attach to is the caretaker or the houseboy or the shamba boy. What is it that the shamba boy has that the husband does not have? That is where the question lies. So, yes, you found that it is negative. This child is not yours. Again, it can go two ways. You can decide the betrayal is too much. I cannot be able to forget about it. I can't pretend. I can't forgive. So we part ways amicably. Or you can try to work it out, cognizant that there will always be moments where you will think, this is not my child. And there is a very high likelihood that in such a scenario, at one point in time, the man will also stray to get their own child out there. So it's a complicated mess, for lack of a better word.
James, I would like for us to actually address a few comments and reflections that we're having from the comment section. And let's just digest in a little bit. I know we are running out of time, but here we go over scenario. It's a big one. As a result of my cousin, my cousin went through depression, denial, self-doubt. He had to be in therapy for 6 years. It did cost him his military career at the end. I don't think he will ever recover from that. Of course, he still loves his girls, but the bond is not the same. The girls are grown now. They also have questions about their identity. It is a never-ending cycle of torture. The girls are in therapy as we speak. So yes, for yes, do a DNA if you are in doubt. I know that's quite a long one, but before you even react to it, James, I want to take a point from it and say, you have identified that these are not your biological children. And this is at year 8, because that's what she mentioned earlier in a comment. Would it be safer to do it earlier? Somebody pointed it and said, yes, that will be better. However, that is convenient for the father or the mother. How about the child? When is the right time, James, to tell your child, listen, this man you see seated over there has no blood bond with you. He's only but raising you as the father you never had? When is the right time?
Ellie, you're mixing issues. You're mixing issues because what you're asking, again, remember, I don't want us to stray. We started with the DNA is being done at the request of the man. So it is the man who has had doubts of the wife not being faithful. So there are infidelity questions that lead the man to seek for DNA. Now the question you pose is now inverted, and we are asking, when is the right time for the child to know? Now, in order for us to find the right time for the child to know, then both parties have to be in the know. Both man and wife have to know that this child does not belong to you or does not belong to you. Because
Indeed.
if one party has held it in secret, but then wants to divulge that secret to the child, then we are damaging the child even more, because we are encompassing the child into a secret against a figure who they have always known as the father. So we've told this child, it's the same as when a child is molested, for example. Yeah, you will find most kids are molested and they're threatened. Yeah, you can never tell anyone. So they grow up in shame and guilt because of what happened, and they can't voice out. That is the same thing would be subjecting a child by talking to them about paternity issues, yeah, without the full knowledge of the other partner. So again, there is no right time to divulge to a child about DNA manenos. Yeah. So that's analysis.
James, probably you didn't get that analogy, because mine is, we have done the test. It has come out negative. And I believe we talked about that. And now we are both aware that this child, one of the parent, the existing one in that bracket, is actually not their biological father. So the both of you know the answers to the questions. When do you then tell this child, this ain't your papa?
Number one, when you have been able to resolve the issues between the two of you. We start there. Yeah. Because again, remember, let's just following the analogy that we are being given, a real case scenario, not an analogy, of that guy who discovered after 8 years. Look at how long he's been in therapy, 6 years. Yeah. So even before we disclose to the child, remember I said we have to be very careful. The child does not feel like they are the problem. They do not personify the problem. Yeah. So first, you need to resolve the issues between the couple. Once they are resolved, and if they can be resolved, then that question that you ask turns into the same question we ask when a family has adopted a child. When is the right time? You understand? Because some children are adopted at infancy. So they do not know any other parent. They grow up knowing these are my biological parents. When is the right time to introduce to them that we adopted you? Again, there is no cutoff that this is it. Human beings are not automotive. They are not robotic. Not all humans will behave the same. There is no switch or cutoff that age 7 is when you should say no. Each kid, each child is different. So it falls upon, and that's why I said from the word go, resolving this is work, because now it falls upon both parents to very systematically observe the child's progression and growth and development, and figure out how to introduce this subject bit by bit by bit. Again, you can't just pour it all. Yeah. So you can start as early as possible talking about blended families, yeah, because there are families that are blended. We have very many types of families, so they are blended families where children have sister, have brother, and all that, yeah, step sister, step brother. So it preparing the mind psychologically to accept the inevitable. So there is no right time, but it can be worked out. But again, the parents have to consciously put in effort. Number one, to show the child that they are not a burden, they are not the problem, and they will continue receiving unconditional love and support, irrespective of the identity.
I love you bringing the blended family issue because we actually covered it in our past discussion in the family edition. And for those who missed out, actually head there. But James, you will tell me I am blending with a child that I've raised knowing their mind. Don't you think, like Edel Koyu says here, it will be hard small?
It will be. I started by saying that. Even before we do the DNA, we need to understand that the dynamics will change. And naturally, this is where I want most people to understand. We might not want the child to know, but naturally, children are observers and feelers. They feel. So we might want to protect them so much, but the dynamics will change and they will pick it. So itakuwa hard small, yes, but it can be done, but it is work. And both parties need to understand this from ab initio, from the word go. They need to understand this and make sure that they are in it for the long haul. Otherwise, you're better off separated. Rather than destroy these children, you're better off separated, and then we can explain the separation later.
We'll explain that as we continue. Because of time, let's figure out what they are discussing in the comment section, and we can quickly just go over them. Sarah Jojo says, again, at in heart, there are those men who want the DNA done to humiliate the lady, swearing they'll never raise someone else's child. And after the positive result, they just disappear. Shame on them. Jane Simon says, the right time is when the child is 16 years and over. Probably yes, probably no, but that's by then the teenagers really kicked in. I don't know how you will escape that hole. And then there is this, again, Jane, I will follow on her comment. The father is the one, okay, this is in response to the question. Let's come to that later on. Let's see, you'll allow me to actually bring this back on from Mahoney, who said, we've had cases where men were impotent. The wives went out and got pregnant by other men. When the DNA is done for medical reasons or for paperwork or doubt, the kids aren't theirs, there's no escaping that hell. You can do whatever you want to do, but you can never escape that hell because finally, and I love the fact that she mentions the medical aspect, James, because most of the time we look at the paperwork, the inheritance and all that. But one day you are here and you need a donor, and for that case, a perfect donor. And then those tests have to be run with an 18-year-old, and daddy is waiting to sign off the papers. And then he's told, I'm sorry, but you are not allowed to sign these papers because the paper says different. Things that we have to look out for. Another one here, Wycliffe says, at in heart, DNA will make me decide evil decisions after struggling to raise a child that isn't mine. I'll rather let her go with the child. And something that you mentioned about separation. Let's see, again, we have my best definition of a father. Okay, let's go now to who your father is. That's Noreen, who says, my best definition of a father is he who has a relationship with his children, even when they are not his. And by that, I believe she means biological children. Another one, again, from, yes, there's a lot of work and healing when it comes to children that are not yours biologically, and when you come to DNA issues. And Edel also concurs and says separation is better. You rather separate. But again, this is the family edition. We do not encourage that unless it's the last results that you have. Trey says, a father is a man who gave you life. Okay. Okay. This now changes the whole idea of what Noreen said earlier on. A father is a man who gives you life. The rest, It's a story for another day, according to him. Let's see who else is saying what. Joel Emali says, I will go ahead with it. DNA test. And Kipro also says, if my partner ever asks for a DNA, I will just pack my bags and leave. That means we don't trust each other. And I believe that's where we started this conversation, James. When do you and why would you actually in the first place ask for a DNA test? So being that we are in the family edition, James, what are the takeaways that you will give to partners and parents that wake up one day and they have doubts about the paternity of the child?
I will start by making a statement that will bring you, not me, fire and brimstone from Nyokabi when she comes back, because she will say you brought in somebody to break her mantra. But my advice is it is better for a family to separate than stay in a dysfunctional family. If all else fails, do not stay in an abusive family. Run. Yeah. Because we stay in abusive families and then our bodies are collected from these families. It's not worth your life. So if you're in a dysfunctional family and everything else has been tried, separation is usually the last resort. It's something that we never want to talk about, but there are situations and circumstances where it is the preferred way out. Having said that, and I've said that quickly so that I can get over it, but having said that, this issue of the DNA, number one, we have the ideal and the real. Yeah. I empathize with women who, out of good intention and good heart, go out there and sire children with other men to protect the image of the man, because there are some circumstances that play so. So you find that the wife, through whatever means, has discovered that the husband is not able to get children. So she goes out and gets children, and because she wants to protect the ego of the man, makes him believe that he's the father. While the intentions are good, the execution is completely off. I would rather go with honesty. Yeah. Because whatever thing that we do behind covers, it ultimately has a way of popping up and at the wrong time. So you'll find that you did it with the best of intentions, but 18 years down the line, it boomerangs on you. Yeah. So I empathize with that. I would ask that from the word go, let's try and practice a little bit of honesty. But then, if issues have already gotten to the point where one party is asking for a DNA, before we outrightly say, let's do it, can the issues be resolved? Again, in our African context, we have jitters about therapy and about pouring, especially marital issues, to a stranger. But at times, this is the only way out, because if left unchecked, it will go on and spiral and create other complicated situations. Again, with all due respect and with a lot of empathy, referring to the same case that was presented here of that guy who is now has developed depression. That's a mental disorder. Yeah, has been in therapy for the last, I think I have had 6 years. The children have gone ahead and now gotten into the cycle and they are in therapy. Yeah, probably if one of the parties, probably the wife, had come out earlier to the husband and gave him the truth, maybe circumstances would be a bit different. Maybe they would not be together, yeah, but maybe they would not be needing all this therapy and they would not be going through all these disorders. So at times, seek therapy before you finally get, and always remember that you're dealing with innocent souls who did not contribute in whichever way to the situation that you find yourself. So in as much as you want to know the truth and everything, protect the young ones who do not have a choice in whatever decisions that you're making.
I believe that's where we leave it for tonight. Protect the young ones because they have no part to play in the decisions you make. Thank you so much, James, for coming. And for everybody that would be needing any psychological advice and probably consultation, you can always reach out to James Mwathi. That is James Mwathi, +254 724 773949. That is +254 724 773949. That is Mwathi James30@gmail.com. And Mwathi, thank you so much for coming and helping us understand why some things have to be done the way they have to be done. My takeaway out of this is things can go south a lot of times, but there's never a right time. There's always the right thing to do. It's never about the right time. It's about the right thing to do. And in this case, the right thing would be probably talk it out before it's too late. Having said that, I wish you a blessed weekend. See you tomorrow night on Against All Odds as I bring my guest, Jacqueline Mutera. Have a great night from us here and Art in Heart. On behalf of James and the rest of the team, have a beautiful night. Good night.